I'm Eric Welander. Welcome back to my channel. So I asked you guys here on YouTube, Twitter, and Instagram to ask me questions, and today I'm going to answer them. You guys had some really good questions about HomeKit, smart home tech, and myself in this business. But first I want to quickly address something that came up in last week's video on my Ring alarm system. And that was that a lot of you guys love and use Abode as your security system, which is what I previously used and recommended and reviewed on this channel. Then with this Ring video, I just talked about that I had some trouble with Abode and I abandoned it for Ring, but I didn't really talk about all the details of why I left Abode. And I detailed a lot of my issues I was having with my Abode system in a video last year where I talked about, despite these issues, I'm still using my Abode system. However, those issues just got worse and worse. My base station would not stay online across multiple wireless networks, wired Ethernet or wireless. My keypad battery just kept draining, and then any kind of errors with my Abode system just resulted in the base station making this beep every couple minutes constantly until the problem was completely solved. So until the battery of the keypad was charged back up to 100%, it would just continue this beep again and again. And so all of that just wore me down, and well, I could continue to stick it out, and Abode support offered to send me a new base station because potentially it was a hardware issue. I'd heard of other people having very similar issues with their Abode systems, and so I felt like I couldn't continue to recommend Abode as a security system for new users coming to this channel who didn't yet have a security system and decided they wanted one. So that's where I went out looking and switching to Ring, just because I'm trying to find what are the best, most reliable options for you guys to put in your smart home. So sometimes that means that you might buy a product that I recommend at a particular time and then I leave it behind, moving on to something else. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's not the right solution for you. If Abode's working well for you or you like sticking with that, great. Who knows, maybe in the future they'll completely change a lot of their software and hardware and reliability issues, and I'll come back to Abode and recommend it again. But that's just part of how I'm always going to be looking for what's the newest, coolest thing for people in the market for whatever that category is. And I might not necessarily stick with whatever you decided to get at the time you needed to purchase the product. Alexander Kent asks, how well does Arlo integrate with HomeKit? I know you have to purchase Arlo Secure, but are there any other cons? I think in general, Arlo is still a really good option to use with HomeKit if you're not as into using HomeKit Secure Video, because Arlo gives you a live view of your cameras inside the Home app, those that support Apple's HomeKit. And some of Arlo's cameras require that you have a base station in order to do this. But then you can use Arlo's secure platform, which has a little bit more advanced options and customization and cross-device compatibility than HomeKit Secure Video. You can still pull up all your Arlo footage on a lot of other smart home devices and Android phones, and you can't do that with HomeKit Secure Video. I made a whole video breaking down HomeKit Secure Video and when it's good and bad. It's a little bit older video on this channel, but I will link it somewhere here on the screen or in the description. The one drawback with Arlo is that the batteries just don't seem to hold up over time if you're keeping them in extreme weather outside. So you're gonna need to find either the solar panels from Arlo that can charge your camera, or get some kind of a battery charger, or just be okay with either A, charging your cameras a lot, or B, having them set in ways where they're not recording a lot of footage. So just some balancing acts there around the battery life of cameras. But overall, I think if you're just looking for good basic cameras, Arlo's still a pretty good option. You can also look at Eufy, although I tend to like Arlo's software a little bit better than Eufy. I think Arlo is better at the software game and making apps for their devices, but with Eufy, you get the option to use HomeKit Secure Video and just run everything through HomeKit. So trade-offs there and something to think about. Casey Liss asks, what's the best internet-connected thermostat these days? Note, I did not say smart. So I use a Nest learning thermostat, and long story short, that's because it can sip power from my HVAC system without a C-wire, because my C-wire is being used for my whole home humidifier. There might be some alternatives around there, and I'm sure many of you more knowledgeable HVAC folks will have opinions about my setup and that it's probably not ideal, but it works for me. And since I got the Nest thermostat working with Apple HomeKit via the Starling Home Hub, I've been kind of reluctant just to go out and get any kind of new thermostats that work natively with Apple HomeKit. That said, I've heard good things about the Ecobee line of thermostats. I think they're probably the default go-to. I've also heard some good things about the Lennox line of thermostats, not necessarily in that they're a great piece of software on your wall, but especially if you're buying like Lennox equipment beyond your thermostat, that integration would work well. But I think regardless of the specific models you choose, there are a few principles to keep in mind with turning your HVAC system smart. The first is that you should try and get some kind of system that has these remote temperature sensors that can wirelessly communicate with the thermostat. Those are going to integrate really nicely and are better for this use case than, let's say, an Eve room or some dedicated just temperature sensor, because it's going to have better integrations with the thermostat. But then you can tell the thermostat, heat and cool the home based off of this sensor in this room, as opposed to where the thermostat is specifically. So that can be really nice, and you can even change throughout the day which temperature sensor it's using to heat and cool the home. The second one is that you might want to start by turning off all automatic features on the thermostat. There are different ways to do this, but for my Nest, I turned off everything automatic. There's no smart home or away modes. And then you can start to add those back in as you feel comfortable, or maybe even just use simple automations in Apple HomeKit to trigger certain things, or just changing what temperature sensor it's looking at throughout the day. Over time, you can start to get an idea based on your living patterns what makes sense for automations. I will say, as you figure out how to optimize your use of your HVAC system, that's probably the smart home thing that will save you the most money, in terms of a huge amount of your energy cost is probably going to heating or cooling your home at any given time of year. So if you can make that more efficient by letting your home get warmer or cooler when you don't need it to be quite as cooled or warmed, it can really save you a lot of money. So definitely an area, if you're newer to smart home tech and you're able to replace your thermostat, it's something to consider. There's a reason why in the US, a lot of electrical companies will give you a rebate for purchasing one, because it will probably decrease the amount of electricity you're pulling from the grid, which is of course good for them. Patrick Wessels asks, what role do you think AirTags will play in the future of HomeKit? AirTags, I think, are really a separate product from HomeKit. I mean, they are very nice to use around your Apple home and finding things, but I don't see Apple using AirTags inside of HomeKit in any way, aside from the technology behind AirTags, which is this ultra wideband radio. There's been some speculation that maybe Apple could use that to sense the presence of when someone goes into or out of a room, and you could run automations based on that. I could see that coming, but there's no signs of that yet. I mean, they already used the ultra wideband chip theoretically to hand off some of when you, let's say, move your iPhone close to a HomePod mini, then it will communicate with it in order to exchange audio, start sending audio over to the HomePod. But that works in so many cases where ultra wideband isn't present as well, that it's like, how much are they actually using that tech there? I don't know. It's all behind the scenes. But Adam Bradley, what is my dream smart home product? Well, I think the best one I could come up with is a tamper-proof smart vacuum. I just want, a lot of these smart vacuums, they have like a power button on the actual vacuum and then other buttons. And I have small children who love to go over and press those buttons. And those buttons actually do things, and there's no way on vacuums that I've played with that you can actually lock all of those buttons and turn them off. I want something that's just like a fortress with just no buttons on the outside, and the vacuum can go into the fortress and no kid can knock it over or trigger it somehow. And then when we all leave the home, the vacuum can come out of the fortress and go and clean everything. And I think that maybe these vacuum companies just haven't thought about these details of that there's this huge market of people who would love to have their floor automatically cleaned or mopped, but they have small children who could come over and tamper with the vacuum, and so they need it to coexist well with small children while also being a great way to clean the floor when they're gone. B. May, I think it's Brian. How do you handle playback to groups of AirPlay 2 speakers? And then he talks about how he hates fumbling for that in Control Center. So a lot of times when we're playing back music on AirPlay 2 speakers, it's talking directly to the HomePods. And so if there's specific music we want, then I'll create a playlist in Apple Music that then I can say that playlist name and Siri can find the music more accurately, or we'll just kind of remember the specific words to get a specific album to play. A lot of times we'll just listen to music by a particular artist, or let's say Beethoven piano sonatas. And then with that, we'll often give the HomePods a direction of, at the end of that, we'll say, hello, Siri, play Beethoven piano sonatas downstairs. And then it knows through the Home app and HomeKit which HomePods or AirPlay 2 speakers are in rooms that are in the downstairs zone. Or let's say I'm in one of the kids' rooms and we're listening to music there, and then I also want it to play in another kid's room. I can say, hello, Siri, also play this music in the twins' room. And then it will start a multi-room session from there, from the one HomePod that was initially playing the music, and then add the additional room. So I found though that multi-room audio in the most recent iOS update is really buggy, and so we've been having a lot of issues, and I've been playing a lot with my ubiquity settings of multicast as unicast and all this other stuff, if you know what that means. Eric Russell asks, what do you expect to see from HomeKit at WWDC? And what do you expect Matter to actually do when it launches someday? And do you think HomeKit will ever get updates outside of iOS-wide updates? And for the first question, WWDC 2021, so last year, was a huge WWDC for HomeKit and the smart home. We got HomeKey, even though we actually just got that as consumers now. That was sort of unveiled and launched last year at the developers conference. And I made a video on that with the Schlage & Co. Plus. It's probably linked somewhere here. Really easy way to use your watch or your phone to unlock your front door, and integrates nicely with HomeKit, of course. We also got a completely redesigned Apple Watch app, and tvOS also got a lot of updates to talk more with HomeKit and better see things like HomeKit cameras, and also have spatial audio and better support for AirPods. So just lots of little improvements across the board as well with HomeKit. So I don't think we're going to get anything too massive this year with HomeKit. I think last year, one of the things you might not have noticed, but there was a lot of developer stuff in the developer materials for adding Matter support to HomeKit, so you could add Matter accessories. Now, of course, that hasn't actually fully shipped yet, so we'll probably see some more movement along that. But one of the things that Apple might do at some point, maybe they'll do it this year at WWDC, is rebrand HomeKit to be something like Home OS. They've had a bunch of job listings on their website over the years that have leaked the term Home OS, and various Apple news sites have caught that leak. And Apple has, for developers, a bunch of these frameworks called kits. So you have UI Kit, Photo Kit, Siri Kit, Home Kit. But HomeKit is now much more broadly known, way outside of developers and things, and it might be that Apple wants to at some point rebrand HomeKit to be more in line with some of their other consumer brands like iOS, iPadOS, macOS. It's hard to say. HomeKit's already gone a long ways. It is a really cool name in certain ways, so I'm fine either way. I could just see them in a year where they don't have as many new features to talk about with HomeKit, sprinkle some marketing dust over some rebranding, and call it all Home OS. As far as then Matter, I think HomeKit is just a way to control a lot of different devices in your home from your Apple devices. Your home is way too varied of a problem set to be encompassed by one company's software and one, let's say, operating system. You have many different pieces. There's a reason why your hardware store has so many different departments. It's because the home is a big problem with a lot of different little issues and things to deal with in certain categories. And with that, Matter's going to allow your Apple devices through HomeKit, the Home app, and third-party home apps to talk to more and more smart home accessories across your home. So I don't know if it'll actually ship this year or not, we'll see, but I'm very optimistic about that compatibility that Matter will bring and how it'll unlock power in HomeKit for lots more people, and also all these accessories in your home that you may or may not have that you have to get working with, let's say, HomeBridge. Now, on the third question, with getting software updates outside of iOS updates, that would be nice because it would allow Apple to quickly move and address bug fixes or things outside of iOS updates. But because HomeKit really is part of the operating system, it's a framework with the operating system beyond just the home app that you see on your phone, that means that I don't think we're gonna see it split from software releases anytime soon. Maybe if Apple makes a home OS, that could be updated separately, like sometimes you see iPad OS or Mac OS get a release outside of iOS or things. So maybe that could change it a little bit, but you know, I don't think that it's going to be where the home app gets updated over the App Store or something anytime soon. You never know. All right, last question here from Big Boy. Is YouTube financially significant, or is this mostly a hobby? Same question for your old app. So I think the short answer is that it's all largely a hobby. In large part, I use the money that I get in revenue from either YouTube or in the past from my app, Best Photos, to make my content and my products better. And that also turns into buying myself more time in various ways in order to work more on producing more videos or better videos, or let's say getting products that are hard or impossible to get a review unit of. I can use the business to buy that product and bring you guys the video. I don't want to talk about all the numbers of all the different ways that I make money with this channel. Maybe I will in the future at some point. But with AdSense, which is just the money I make from the ads that play in front of these videos on YouTube or the views that come from YouTube Premium subscribers, that is anywhere between $450 and $600 a month, usually averaging around $500-ish a month. There have been months where it's a lot higher, like double that. There have been months where it's a little bit lower, but that tends to be about the expected income just from YouTube AdSense. There are other ways the channel makes money from affiliates and direct sponsorships inside of videos and other things. As you can probably guess, that's not gonna feed my family of 5. I do still work in my job, but I think the next chapter of this channel is I will probably add some more ways for you guys, if you enjoy this content, to support the channel. If there are things you'd like to see me do in that area, please let me know in the comments or in an email or something else. I'd love to hear your feedback. But I think right now in the near term, my focus is on improving and growing the YouTube channel. I think we're at an inflection point with both the channel and smart home tech where it's poised for a lot of growth. And so I'm really excited about that. And I think financially, before I would potentially go independent, I would probably look to add on maybe an editor or a researcher or, you know, some kind of contract work there to help with the process and allow me to output more content before I would actually be paying my salary from the revenue of the business. Thank you guys for asking some great questions and being super fans and watching all the way to this point in the video. If you have missed it, maybe for some reason, I recently did a video on how to install a Lutron Cassetta wireless dimmer switch. If that's something you're thinking of getting into, there's a video link here on the screen for that. Thanks again so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.